Matthew chapter 14, verse 1 to 21. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus, and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For John said unto him, It is not lawful for thee to have her. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them, and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought in a charger, and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. And his disciples came and took up the body, and buried it, and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Jesus went forth, and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages, and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed, and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. Matthew chapter 14 begins with the tragic death of John the Baptist and concludes with one of the most well-known miracles in the ministry of Jesus, the feeding of the 5,000. Together, these events reveal both the world's rejection of God's messengers and Christ's unfailing compassion and divine power. The chapter opens with Herod hearing about the growing fame of Jesus. His guilty conscience causes him to believe that John the Baptist has risen from the dead. Matthew then recounts how John had faithfully confronted Herod's sinful relationship with Herodias, his brother's wife. John did not compromise God's truth to gain favor with those in authority. Because of his faithfulness, he was imprisoned and eventually executed. Herod himself recognized John's righteousness, yet he allowed fear, pride, and the pressure of others to lead him into a terrible decision. This account reminds us that knowing what is right is not enough. A person must also have the courage to obey God rather than yielding to the fear of man. After John's disciples bury him, they bring the news to Jesus. Seeking solitude, Christ withdraws to a deserted place. Yet when the multitudes follow him, Jesus does not respond with irritation or frustration. Instead, he is moved with compassion. Even in his own time of sorrow, his concern remains fixed upon the needs of others. As evening approaches, the disciples see only the practical problem. Thousands of people are hungry, and they possess only 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Humanly speaking, the situation appears impossible. Jesus, however, teaches his disciples that what is impossible for man is not impossible with God. Christ takes the small offering, gives thanks to the Father, breaks the bread, and distributes it through his disciples. Not only does everyone eat until satisfied, but 12 baskets of leftovers remain. The miracle demonstrates that Jesus is not limited by human resources. He is the Creator who provides abundantly. This miracle also reveals an important lesson for the disciples. They were quick to focus on what they lacked, while Jesus focused on the sufficiency of God's power. When what little they had was placed into Christ's hands, it became more than enough to meet the needs of the multitude. Throughout this passage, Matthew presents Jesus as the compassionate Messiah who continues ministering despite rejection, sorrow, and opposition. John's faithful witness ends in martyrdom, yet Christ's ministry continues with mercy, power, and provision. The chapter reminds us that although the world often rejects God's servants, God's purposes continue to move forward through His sovereign power and compassion. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more KJV Bible Teaching. Until next time, search the Scriptures. Grace be with you.